Yo, yo, yo. This is candibknittin. I'm Candy B, and I be knitting. And today I be knitting some sweaters. So, today is January 8th, no, 10th. Oh my God, the 10th, 2025. It's been a while. Last week I actually recorded my video 2 days earlier than when I was planning. So it's funny. I just said the 10th instead of I said the 8th instead of the 10th. So just trying to get into gear for trying to get used to saying 2025, trying to figure out what day it is. But I'm going to rewind a little bit back to 2024 because I finished, let's see, this bad boy back probably December 30th or 31st. I really wanted to get it done before the end of the year, and I completed that. And this is my Stripy t-shirt by Sarah Hatton. And yeah, it's done. At this point I would normally do a pattern deep dive video, but because this was published in a magazine, it's not size inclusive, it's in hand spun. I don't know how helpful that would be for me to go through the entire pattern, but just as a recap, this is a seamed drop shoulder garment, V-neck. The front is knit in one piece. The back is knit in one piece. Then there's some seaming involved. There's this V-neck shaping that happens. The pattern was originally published in 2015 in Simply Knitting magazine, which is a UK-based magazine, and was republished in 2020 in this little pamphlet. When I first started to knit, I bought a copy of Simple Knitting magazine, and it came with this little pamphlet called Great Summer Cover-Ups, and it comes with 3 patterns by Sarah Hatton. And I was cleaning up my craft room and came across this and decided to make something out of here. And so this is her stripy tee. The original pattern calls for cotton linen yarn, so this is a total departure from the pattern. It's supposed to be a summer type garment, 3/4 length sleeves, cotton linen yarn. Calls for, the body is on 4.5 millimeter needles. The ribbing is 4 millimeter needles. DK yarn, and I decided that I wanted to do it with my hand spun, and the yarn I used, the contrast colors you see here, the bright highlighter type colors, are organic Polwarth from the Spotted U / Ashen Wensleydales. And I'm looking around because I moved things on myself. This is my little baggie that I have left that needs to go back into scrap bins, etc., etc. So this was Ashen U, a collaboration by Spotted U Fibers and Ashen Wensleydales. The colorway was Cheaper Than Therapy. It was a 5-ounce gradient set in organic Polwarth, and this is what I bought my first year I went to Maryland Sheep and Wool, and so this is some of my first hand spun that I actually spun on a drop spindle. Then the gray you are seeing is well, first of all, I don't think those dyers dye anymore. Secondly, the gray fiber, most of the gray fiber you're seeing is Gotland from an Etsy shop called Friends and Fiber that I don't think is in business anymore. And then I had 5 ounces of the brightly colored yarn. I had 2 4-ounce braids of the Gotland, and then I started to run out, and so I broke into I had some Navajo churro that I got on Instagram, no big shop name or nothing like that. So I don't have, ended up all I had left of the Navajo churro. And you can see this is much closer to maybe a heavy DK weight, light worsted gauge. And then I have this much left of that early hand spun I was talking about in the contrast color. And this was on my drop spindle, so very lumpy, bumpy, fluffy, all kinds of like little bits in there. My intention was to use every little bit of this contrast yarn, but somewhere in my math I got off with how many stripes were in the body, so I kind of had to, call an audible and incorporate the last color, which was this yellowy green color, into the ribbing. And so that's here, and that's down at the bottom. I have the ribbing here, and I'll put it on right quick. This is not an orthodox way of wearing a sweater because I'm already wearing a sweater, but that'll give you an idea of sizing as well. I did like a medium size, but obviously my gauge is all over the place because my yarn was all over the place, which is another kind of note for when I'm working with my hand spun. Rather deep V-neck, which I don't mind because I don't find a lot of V-necks in knitting, and I do prefer a V-neck, and I would probably wear this. Last night I wore this with a turtleneck, but I have a lot of button downs, a lot of 3/4 length button downs I would wear this with to like work or what have you. Seamed in the shoulders. Couple of things back to what I was talking about with gauge. I kind of picked out what I felt was the most consistent in this contrast yarn and used that for the front. And then the back, I used the less desirable pieces, and so that lent itself to a bit of a difference in gauge. So probably next time if I'm dealing with a lot of thick and thin, I would probably just mix it up to give more on average a consistent gauge. Another reason I would not do it like a deep dive on this pattern is because it's from a magazine, so it's already kind of short on space, and so it's not very beginner friendly. And I kind of had to figure a lot out on my own, so I don't think I would personally knit this pattern again, just because I just know there's other patterns out there that are more descriptive. So I did just another recap. I started with a provisional cast on. The pattern just has you knit the ribbing, but I was just like, I'm working with hand spun. I don't know how much I'm going to have. Obviously, I did not have enough hand spun. Spoiler alert. I knit the front, and then it has you break off and do one part of the V-neck, break off and do the other part of the V-neck. I don't know if you can tell, but there is a little bit of like a ribbing on the edge here. And while you're doing that, you're also doing increases for this sleeve. So a lot of drop shoulders are, usually like two rectangles, kind of knitted together. This one, you actually cast on sleeve stitches. Then you also, this is another kind of flub on my part, you keep knitting the edging, and then you sew the edging to the back of the sweater. And you can see this is a little rumpled here. At first, when I seamed it, the edging was too short, and I had to go back and knit a little bit more. But I think at this point, I just need to I blocked the front and the back before I seamed it. But now that they're sewn together, I think I need to just block it together and shape it really good. And I think it's going to lay flat, and that's the back of my neck anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But you can see it kind of folds over, which is not desirable. And also I used some lumpy, bumpy leftovers to finish up this collar. If I was knitting this again, I would probably go with a more consistent yarn for the neckline. The other thing I did differently, obviously I said it's knit flat, but when I got done, I knit the ribbing in the round. And something interesting this pattern does it's a 1x2 ribbing, and I looked at the picture and I looked at the instructions because I knew I was going from knitting flat to in the round, so I was triple checking the instructions, and I just thought that was a little different than what I'm used to seeing with sweaters. And I actually prefer the look of the 2x1 rib that's on the wrong side better, and I played with the idea of frogging it and doing it again, but I was like, at this point I just want to be done. And it does not, now that I'm like a week after finishing the project, I'm not that heartbroken about it. The other thing is, because I'm in more of a, I guess you could call it contemporary modern state of mind, I didn't really read the instructions that clearly. And so the pattern has you knit the front, knit the back. Then they have you seam the shoulders. Then it has you pick up and knit for the sleeves, but they wanted you to do this ribbing flat, and I didn't realize that until I was already like partly done with the ribbing. I had just picked up as many stitches as they said, and I just started knitting in the round, but they wanted you to knit that flat because in the pattern they hadn't quite told you to seam the sleeves and the sides yet, and so the intention was you would have had a seam here, I think. And so there was actually a couple of extra stitches on mine because I wasn't accounting for seaming, and I was like, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought to do that because most drop shoulders I see are knit the front, knit the back, then pick up in the round and knit the sleeve in the round. But I had already gone through the process of washing and blocking it, and I was already in the middle of seaming, so I'm just like, just seam the whole thing since I'm here. And so that was interesting. I guess I could have still knit it flat and then seamed it later, but at that point, there is something to be said about seaming. You have like that nice structure the seaming gives, as opposed to like, sometimes when this is seamed too, but sometimes you're wearing like just a regular raglan, everything's a little bit more sloped. And so I do like the look of the seams, but for the ribbing, I just don't find it to add that much value. So that's that, and I'm done with that. I've worn it a couple times. I thought it was going to be like super, I don't know if it's like, it's just been that cold outside, but I was like, this is going to be so warm because it's like hand spun, it's Gotland, and it's super toothy. But I've been pretty cold, and so I wore this last night with a turtleneck, and my coat, and I was just like, this feels like the appropriate amount of clothes to have on right now. We went to the park the day after Christmas because the kids got scooters for Christmas, and I was like, I'll just throw this on, and I was just like, actually I could have used a coat. So really not that bad. It is definitely on the prickly side. The Polwarth is super soft, but the Gotland and especially the Navajo Churro is very toothy. The Navajo Churro actually had a lot of kind of those thicker straight guard hairs in it. And so when I took this off, I was wearing a black turtleneck last night, and so I had a bit of shedding on my black turtleneck. And so definitely not next to skin soft, but I always wear something underneath my hand knits. There is like, I don't know if that's not a drop stitch. I just need to go through with like a crochet hook and kind of hook that up a little bit. There's like some like maybe underspun areas in my knitting that can be cleaned up, but we'll see how this holds up. To date, this is the most hand spun I've used in one item. I ran out, like I said, I was running out of yarn, and I ended up using the yellow on the sleeve, on the ribbing, but I actually started to run out. I had the option to start the yellow on the back because I'd gotten to this point and I'm like, I can start a new color, but I really wanted to match the front and the back. And I put in short rows in the back, and so I was really kind of, I couldn't deal with changing colors and doing short rows on the back. And so I had some hot pink yarn just in my stash that I threw in here. And the other thing is I used commercial yarn for seaming. I did not use hand spun to seam it because I felt like that would stretch the yardage a little bit more and also give a little bit more structure, and it's hard enough to, like, I had a hard time seeing my stitches because this is, I don't know if y'all can see how fuzzy and the halo around this yarn, but I was like, I just need one less yarn that is throwing me off. And I also used, let me pull this out. So this is the yarn from my stash that I used to seam the whole, this is the yarn, to seam the whole project. And I also used this to do all my cast offs, because I wanted them to, like, you know, look a little bit cleaner. And this is Nature Spun by Brown Sheep Company. And this is a sport weight yarn, 100% US grown wool, 50 gram balls. This also says it's moth proof. I don't know what that means in regards to yarn. I've never seen that on, this is my first time seeing that on a ball of yarn before. And this is in the color charcoal. And I just had one ball of this in my stash, and so I just grabbed this. And so, like I said, I used it for seaming because it, you know, just went through the holes really easy. I can see the yarn very easy. And then I used it for all my cast offs. So, like, you know, if I had used my hand spun for the cast offs, it would have used a lot more yardage, and it would have been like boop, 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 boop. And you know, here it's just like boop, 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 boop. There are sound effects in my ribbing. And I used that on here, and then I used it on the sleeves as well. And I made sure I ended with the gray, and it just kind of seamlessly blends with the gray hand spun. So that's that. I'm glad. I'm moving on with my life now. And I have to figure out what the next, like, big hand spun project is. That's probably going to be one of my upcoming videos, is just kind of showing some things I'm thinking about doing with hand spun. But I was kind of looking through my hand spun stash, and I'm not seeing a lot of skeins that I could bring together in a big project. So the next thing I do with hand spun is probably going to be a small part of hand spun being complemented by some sort of uniform commercial yarn, or pulling out some bigger quantities of hand spun and spinning up something. One last time. So I finished that, and immediately was just like, okay, what are we casting on next? And oh, the one thing I wanted to mention with this, so the final sweater, like I said, I had 5 ounces of the contrast color. I had 2 4-ounce braids of Gotland, and I weighed the final sweater just on a kitchen scale, and the final sweater weighed 430 grams. And so that means I used about 60 grams of the Navajo churro once I ran out of everything. Well, maybe like 50 grams, because then you have to take into account the seaming and these stripes with the commercial yarn. So I am, I'm 5'6", about 160 pounds, 38 to 40 inch bust. And so your mileage may vary, but a lot of times people are like, oh, I spin, how much fiber should I buy to make myself a sweater? This sweater weighed 430 grams. It is 3/4 length, full body length, allegedly a DK gauge, but you see how deep that V is and how thick that colored yarn is. So, use your imaginations. If someone were to come up to me today and say, Candy B, I have fiber for sale, and I wanted to buy a sweater quantity, I'd probably go for like 500 grams, 5 4-ounce braids, depending on what the put up is. So just take that information as you will. Maybe that would be helpful to someone. This sweater is rather heavy though, and so it just depends on your grist and your spinning technique too, the final gauge. There's a lot of factors, but if I wanted enough of all the same color to know that I have more than enough to make a sweater for myself, I'd probably go for 500 ounces, or 5 braids. I'd probably just go for a whole pound, to be honest with you, because then I know I got plenty, to play around with and to sample with, etc., etc., etc. The next thing I want to show y'all, so that was the end of 2024. New Year's Eve, I do like to do a cast on, not because of any like particular, I guess it is kind of tradition, but it's more so because I'm going to be up late. I don't stay up till midnight, but I definitely stay up a little bit later than average. I'm already on vacation. I already have, there's going to be, I don't go out or anything. It's not like, my kids are young. And so, it's pretty chill day. So it's a good day to cast something new on. And it's fun for me to stay up, to cast something on a day and then just see how far I can get in a day. And so New Year's Eve, I'm usually just chilling on the couch, just vibing. And so I really want something that's pretty low maintenance, something I can really jam on, something that as I'm getting tired and getting ready for bed, I'm not making mistakes on. So I was like, what is something that I can cast on? And I told y'all that I wanted to make sweaters for my children. I went ahead and, went for that. I showed them both the yarn that was an option for them, and they both immediately gravitated to their yarn, and they both wanted pullovers. I did not have to twist their arm. They were like, no, we want it to go over our heads. I was like, that's great. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'll cast on a flax by TinCanKnits because that's, it's a raglan top down for a child. It should be pretty low hanging fruit. I cast it on New Year's Eve, and I just could not. A lot of people say, oh, if you're knitting a sweater for the first time, do the flax. It's so popular. It's free. It comes in so many sizes. I love TinCanKnits. I have the app, so I was like, oh, I can just download an app and start. I can say this because the pattern is free. The raglan increase, one of the raglan increases is also a beginning end of round. And for some reason, my brain just could not deal with it. And so every single time I would get to the end of the round, I'm just like, because usually I've not knit that many sweaters, to be honest with you, but the raglans I have knit, the beginning of round is in the middle of the back of the neck, and then there's a set of stitch markers at 4 points for the arms. And usually I like to use 8 stitch markers, and I put a stitch marker on either side of the raglan increases. And then I have like a unique marker for the beginning / end of round. And so my brain was just there, and I was just like, I can't do this. And then also the flax has the garter stitch panel down the side, which I was going to do. And then they're like, oh, put unique stitch markers for the garter panel so you know when you're knitting garter stitch. And I was just like, it's the last day of 2024. I just don't want to do this. No offense to the pattern. That's where my brain was at. So I had knit like maybe 5 rounds, and I just ripped it out, and I went back through my app, and I just went to the simple sweater, which is a paid for pattern. It's a circular yoke. And I was like, okay, this is where I needed to be. Because it's a circular yoke, and all the increases are at like really even integrals. Like they're literally at even integrals. I'm just trying not to give the stitch count because it's a paid for pattern, but it was exactly what my brain needed to like just be in a zone. And so I'm doing just enough that it's interesting, and I'm increasing at these even integrals and a nice like juicy round number, and I'm able to sit and talk with my husband for a little bit, talk to the kids, watch TV, that kind of, and we're still kind of in like holiday movie mode too. And so it was just like the perfect project. And so this is how far I've gotten so far. And this is the Stripy sweater by TinCanKnits. I believe the pattern's $8, same as all the other TinCanKnits patterns, baby all the way up through, well over 60-inch chest. This is the kind of rainbow striped sweater I did for myself. This is that pattern, but this is for my kid, and she is 5 years old and has a 22-inch chest. And so I'm doing the size 4 to 6, and the finished chest circumference, if you're getting gauge, should be about 26 inches. And I was thinking of like going up a size because she, kids grow. But I do have like kind of a vision of how I want it to fit, and this will fit her perfectly right now. Both of my kids, just per, statistically, are on the thinner, taller side. And so I measured her older sister, who has a very similar growth pattern and shape, and the chest fits her too. And so, if anything, she'll just kind of get taller and taller. And so that's why I picked this size. I also, for the kids' safety and things like that, I don't like super baggy clothes on the kids. My older daughter, who is 8, has already requested that her sweater be oversized. She's able to handle that a little bit better, but for a 5-year-old, they need to be able to, like, my daughter gets very frustrated if she can't get her sleeves up the way she wants them to, or they get wet when she's washing her hands. So I definitely wanted something that was not too baggy. And this might grow over time. The yarn is a mystery yarn. It's thrift store yarn, the main body yarn. And so let me show y'all this. I got 5 or 6 balls from this from the thrift store. The color is really what drew me in. It puts me in the mind of Lion Brand Homespun, but it's thinner in some spots. So Lion Brand Homespun is probably like worsted bulky and probably about this consistency all the way through, but this is like, it's kind of big and fluffy here, then it's like more crinkly and thinner here, and that's how it is. I did a little bit of research on the internet, and I have not been able to find a similar yarn on the internet. I did do a burn test to see what kind of fiber it was before I decided what project I was going to do, and it's acrylic. It's 100% acrylic. But the colors definitely are in the wheelhouse of my child. She immediately was like, I want that color. I was like, cool. And so it's pretty, maybe it'll grow. I don't know. But for right now, I laid it across like all of her other sweaters she owns. She's like in a 5T, 6X kind of size range. And it's literally about the same size. I used to be if this was like a sitcom, you would have like an intersplice of me being like, I'll never knit for kids. Why do people knit for kids? But this will last her a couple of seasons, and it's just so precious. It's just so cute to like knit something small and just be like, oh God, I can't believe this is how big my kid is right now. So it's actually kind of sweet. I'm definitely getting into that mode. Also, I find that the clothes I buy in stores they just don't last. Like, I've knit, both of my kids have garments that I've knitted for them, and they've lasted quite some time. You think, oh, the kid's going to be rough with it, or they don't appreciate hand knit things, or it's going to get stained. And the 2 things that I've knit, a vest for my older daughter, and then I turned it in, I picked up stitches along the bottom and made it into a dress when the vest got too short for her. And that thing is going on like 3 years old now. And then I knit a dress for my younger daughter, and that thing is, 1 or 2 years old now, and they wear them all the time. They really appreciate it. They think they see me knitting, and they're like, oh, is that for me? Oh, what's that? How are you doing that? And so I've really warmed up to the idea of knitting for them. And like I said, like some of the stuff in the stores is just like so ill-fitting and strange construction, falls apart after 1 or 2 washes, and my hand knit stuff is still going pretty strong. So yeah, this is going to be her little sweater. It's January. She'll be able to wear this through April probably, especially just as like a sweatshirt, and also, how toddlers are. Once they get like a piece of clothing they like, they'll find any reason. They'll wear it all day, every day. And so I really, I really appreciate when they really gravitate towards something. You can tell I used a different yarn for the cuff, and that is this. Oh my goodness, I have this completely This is Stylecraft DK yarn, and the color Spring Green, which to me, once you knit it up with this blue, purple, tealy yarn, it's kind of giving like a minty quality to it. And it's Stylecraft DK, Stylecraft Special Double Knit. And I've never knit with Stylecraft before, but this is like super soft. Like if I needed to knit a baby blanket, I would probably make it out of this. And so I think it's also going to be really nice because I'm doing the cuffs, the bottom ribbing, and then I'm going to pick up stitches for the neckline. I'm going to do a double knit band for the neckline. And so I think it's going to be really nice, like against her neck. So it's not that this yarn is itchy, but that yarn is just super duper soft. And so I think that's going to be nice. I'm going to do like a nice thick double knit band. So then as she grows too, the sweater will have a little bit more space to it up here. Yeah, I think that's all the pertinent information. Size 4 to 6. Today's the 8th. I started this on the 31st of December, so you can see how quick a child's knit will knit up. I used like 2 balls of that mystery yarn for the body. Did the standard body, got nearly to the body length that I needed, and I didn't feel like starting with a new ball of yarn, so I just started the ribbing. The pattern does call for either a 2x2 or 1x1 rib, but the multiple at the bottom was such that I could do a 2x1, and that's my preferred rib. Did the sleeve to pattern. It calls for like 10-inch sleeves. I put it on my kid, and I was like, oh, that's the exact length he needed. And I'm doing double, they say 2 inches for the cuff down here, and I did double that so she can fold it over and give a little bit more, structure, like I was saying, if she wants to push her sleeves up, but also as she gets taller, a little bit more leeway to grow into this sweater. And so that's that. Y'all might not see this again because I'll definitely be finished within the week. The sleeve took me literally yesterday afternoon. I started the sleeve, and I was kind of up against the gun just now finishing the ribbing because I just didn't want a bunch of double point needles hanging off. And so it took me 2 afternoons to finish the sleeve. And so another 2 afternoons for this sleeve. And this is going to take me no time at all to do this. And so once I do need to wash it, obviously, because this is a secondhand yarn, just to make sure there's nothing creepy on here. And I totally imagine that once I give this to my child, I might not ever see it again. She did ask specifically that I put a tag in here. I did do there's optional short rows in the pattern, and I did do the short rows just so it's very obvious that this is the back. But she said, are you going to put a tag in there? I was like, yeah, I'll put a tag in there for you. And so I'm going to do that, and I might figure out a way to maybe double stitch an initial in there or something just so people know that it's hers. Yeah, she's pretty excited about this. She asked me if I would, for the most part, I do what they want me to do. Like, I let them pick the colors, if they want it long, short. She did ask for short sleeves, but I was just like, do you just want short sleeves because you want it fast? And she was like, yeah. And I was just like, I'm going to do long sleeves. I think you really actually do want the long sleeves. I'll do short sleeves in a lighter weight yarn. This is like super thick, fluffy yarn. That's another reason, going back to my hand knit sweater, or my hand spun sweater, that's another reason I did a contrast with the ribbing, because this is so lumpy and bumpy. I just want it to look really clean in the finishing. And I could have done, I have teal yarn, I have purple yarn, but I just thought this high contrast was just a really fun look, especially when knitting for a child. And so that's that. That's the simple sweater by TinCanKnits. Last but certainly not, actually this is last and least, I wanted to give y'all a little update on my Besties hoodie. And this is it's 2 out of 3 TinCanKnits patterns. And the only reason I have not frogged this is because of my own vanity. This is the Besties hoodie by TinCanKnits. I'm doing this in Rich Hill yarns. And I was like, I want a fingering weight hoodie. The problem is not the fingering weight. So let me show y'all so far. So I started on the back. And then I started the pickup. So it's a drop shoulder hoodie. So I started the back panel, and then they want you to pick up for part of the front, pick up for the other part of the front, and then knit the front to a certain length, and then you join in the round, and then you got sleeves sticking out. So it's like this. All right, you might already guess what the problem is. So I was just like, am I using size 3 needles? No, I'm using size 2 needles because I wanted like a stiffer gauge, but I also wanted it to be fingering weight. And I chose the 44-inch bust. I have a 40-inch bust, and so I was like, okay, I'll go up a size, but down with the needles. And I had it in my head. The issue is, if you were to take any advice away from me, is to read the entire pattern before picking a size. Because like I was saying before, drop shoulders, I'm just like, oh, it's going to be a rectangle here, a rectangle here. I'm going to sew it up. I'm going to be good to go. And I also, like I said, I didn't want it to be like super baggy hoodie. I wanted like a negative ease situation. The problem is the nature of a drop shoulder does not lend itself to negative ease because proportionately the pattern is written in such, I think she recommends like 6 to 10 inches of positive ease for the adult sizes. So it was going to fit in the body, but the issue is you pick up for the front and you start doing increases and you're creating your neck hole already. And so that it literally would not go over my head, which I don't have the smallest head in the world. And so it would be a situation where, which this was my concern even going into the pattern. So I don't know why I didn't think about this, because I like oversized hoods. I want the neck to fit a certain way, but I just didn't want it too baggy in the body. I'm just like, I don't think that means I want a drop shoulder. Then I still want the pattern because I think a hand knit hoodie is just something that I want, but I don't think that this is the approach I should take. I should just I should not be modifying it at this point. I should be just following what they want me to do, because first of all, I've never knit a hoodie, and second of all, I don't do that many drop shoulders, and so I just think I need to take a step back and rethink the whole thing, long story short. And so, a little bit upset. I did want to show y'all, I did the pickup so neat. It was just like this seamless little pickup. You pick up stitches for the front, and it just was like, oh, this is so beautiful. But beautiful for not this pattern. And then it's like this yarn is like super precious to me. I've been talking about this is Rich Hill Yarns, and it's like, oh, this is my Richmond, Virginia yarn, and I want it to all be special. And I think it's just, I still want to use this yarn for something. I still want the hoodie, but I just don't think it's going to be it kind of like left a bad taste in my mouth. And so it was just kind of like, I just threw the whole thing in my bag, and I'm like, I just don't even want to look at this right now because it's like breaking my heart. And so this is going to get frogged. Very long story short, it's going to get frogged. I will approach the hoodie at a different point after I thoroughly read the pattern and really think about what it's asking me to do and what gauge and style would lend itself best to that. And I just think I was approaching that wrong. Also, over the course of that, now I'm just like, I don't even think I want a sweater out of that yarn. I think so I'm going to pivot now. Because it was the start of a new year, I pulled out all of my yarn, pulled out all my patterns, and I'm thinking about what I want to make for the year. And so that means I pull out all my Stephen West books, and I'm like, okay, what shawls do I want to make this year? Don't worry, this is all going to make sense very soon. Because I made one shawl last year, I have all my West Knits, Best Knits book. I want more shawls. I enjoy knitting shawls. They make me very, very happy. And so I was going through all of my patterns. I'm thinking, this is West Knits, Best Knits Volume 1. And the very first pattern in here is, actually the cover and it's the exploration station. And so I'm just like, oh, it's the first it's the first pattern in the first volume. I'm gonna make an exploration station. So I picked out this yarn. And this is Zen yarn. I got some Urban Yarn Girls, who is local to me, and some Passion Knit yarn. I may or may not go through these yarns in greater detail later because, very long story short, I'm just like, oh, I pulled out this yarn. I'm going to make the exploration station. Then I'm looking at this sweater that's going to get ripped out and this other yarn. And I'm like, maybe I can make an exploration station work with this yarn. And so I'm just like, so right now the plan is, so I have this, I have 4 full-size balls of these colorways. I think this is Tacky Lights, this like magenta color. I don't remember all these colors. I think this is, don't worry about it. We'll fix it in post. And then I have this bag, which is mini skeins of all the colors. And there's nine colors in the mini 92 gram, not 92 gram, 92 yard balls in here, 20 gram balls. And so I was just like, first of all, I have more yarn than I thought I had. I was like, oh, I have 4 full skeins and 92 yards times 9. I was like, okay, I either want a giant shawl, or I'm also thinking about doing a blanket for myself, which is kind of out of ordinary for me, but I like literally just got a new couch, and I was like, oh, it'd be nice to have like a really sophisticated blanket just for me to sit on the couch that no one else can touch. And so I spent a lot of time today going through patterns, looking at advent patterns, looking at patterns that lend themselves well to like striping. I don't want to marl them. I definitely want to stripe them. And I spent a lot of time looking in this book, and I'm pretty sure I've landed on the exploration station. I'm also acknowledging that because I have so much yardage, I thought like, oh, I want all my Richmond yarn to be in one project, and I don't know I think I'm ready to divorce some of this yarn from some of the other yarn and maybe mix in other yarns. Going through a lot of patterns, looking at a lot of stuff, and so for now it's gonna sit in this bag a little bit longer. This exploration station back here may or may not get made, but that's just where I'm at mentally. And on that note, where are you at mentally? How's your craft room looking these days? Have you pulled all of your stuff out? Are you ready for a very messy 2025? Let me know. Once again, I'm Candy B. I be knitting. You can find me on Instagram at Rulude. You can also send me an email, candybknittin@gmail.com. You can also buy me a coffee on the Ko-fi. Until next time, peace.